if I would just take a mental health day and just schedule a massage or go do something, that would then help me to keep going forward. So just being really in tune with yourself on what your needs are and being okay with loving yourself enough to take a break from life if you need to, and I found I needed that more than ever, even more than when I lost my mom. When I lost Lane, I had to take a break from life a lot, and I think that's okay. We need to give ourselves permission to do that.
Welcome to Mastery Podcast with Dr. Sass, formerly A True Goddess Podcast. I am your host, Dr. Sass. This is a podcast where we awaken you to express your true essence. My intention is to lead humanity to flourish as true divine beings, living an empowered and abundant life, inspiring each other to expand our authenticity, master our lives, and rise to confidently live our true purpose. Welcome, Laurie, to A True Goddess Podcast. And Laurie is my childhood friend, a great friend of mine that I get to reconnected because we share the same experience. And I wish I would have reconnected with you earlier. But Laurie is a nurse. And you want to people to know your age?
Well, yeah, I put my age right out there.
All right. I'm 30 years old, by the way, forever.
You can fool me, or you can't fool me, but you can fool everyone else. Because I know your age, because you're the same age as me.
Yeah, we kind of we grew up together, and Laurie is an amazing friend and amazing person. Laurie is 51 years old. And I'm 30. Laurie is married to Tony, soon to be 27 years now. Wow, congratulations. And Laurie have twin sons, Lucas, which is 22 years old, and Lane, who's we will be talking about your experience with Lane's passing at the age of 19. You're a nurse, I'm sure a great nurse, and a nurse practitioner for the past 16 years, and an adjunct instructor for nursing at the graduate level for 10 years. Wow. Laurie enjoy time with your family and friends, especially traveling and trips to the beach. Laurie loves to play with her Australian Shepherd, Siki, teach him new tricks. She enjoyed the simple things as getting older, a sunset, the wind in your hair, a nice walk in the woods, watching her favorite TV shows, reading and drinking coffee, and dinner with her family and friends. She loved being outside in nature and when you're not working. Wow. Yeah. Don't we all love it when we're not working?
Yes, that's all right. Well, thank you for having me. And I'm so glad we reconnected.
Thank you so much, Laurie, for being my guest. And we're going to talk about a very heavy topic, and it may bring up some emotion. And so I very truly appreciate you being here to help our listener heal and to help to let them know that they're not alone. If they are a mother who just lost a child, or who have lost their children for a few years, it's still a fresh wound, right? Yes. And we share the same experience. I lost my son Andrew. It would be a year ago, and it still seems like yesterday. And sometimes you relive those painful memories. And I do appreciate you being here. And Laurie, as a nurse practitioner, and finding out about Lane was difficult for you, right? Because you're in the position where you're a clinician. You're supposed to know how to take care of people and see all the crews and stuff. But as a mother, we're too close.
Yeah.
As a family, we're too close. And can you tell us a little bit about
yes,
Lane?
Of course.
The person that
I love talking about him.
Boy that he was and still is in heaven.
That's right. I love talking about him too, especially the early years, which were so good. But Lane was just, I don't know, from the time he was born, he was just happy. He smiled a lot. He was funny, he had a kind of a dark sense of humor, which we all found hilarious. He was really kind. He was always helping his papa out with a project or whatever he needed. And, he was just a great kid and very affectionate too. Like he was always giving hugs and smiles to anybody. And his young life was so just wonderful, really. When he got to middle school, he started having some problems with his self-esteem and had trouble fitting in a little bit. Hung out a little bit with some people that maybe weren't the best influences at times. And he, in his high school years, he suffered from depression. Like the last year of high school, I noticed that he was a little more withdrawn and just not very motivated to do things, and a little bit isolated, even from family stuff. He didn't want to participate in family things like he had done. And so I took him for care, to get some help with a mental health practitioner. And she prescribed him some medication, recommended counseling. And he wouldn't really go to counseling. He didn't want to talk to a stranger, is what he would say. But he would talk to me some, and he seemed like he was doing well for a while on medication. But what I didn't know, and what I found out later, of course, hindsight is just terrible, because you go through their phones and you read their text messages and you see their Snapchat and you see all that stuff, and then it kind of all falls into place. But what I didn't know is that he was seeking a drug to cope with his depression, and which often happens in young people, especially with the accessibility that we have of, substances in our society. And so he inadvertently, he was at his girlfriend's home, and they took a drug together that ended up being laced with fentanyl, and he passed from an accidental, I call it poisoning. Some people call it overdose, but no one chooses, to be poisoned with fentanyl. And she panicked and, didn't call 911 right away, and didn't have Narcan, and he passed away. And we got that phone call in the middle of the night, that I didn't even know her, because he had only dated her for 6 weeks. And she was screaming or crying and telling me that Lane had died on her couch. And I just was in disbelief. Of course, my husband and their son were hearing me scream and yell and just cry. They came in there, and I had to tell them, what was going on. And it was a horrible, horrible moment. But it's weird, because I guess my nurse instinct kicks in, and all I could do was get to him. I needed to get to Lane, and I could save him. That was my thinking, was that I can fix him if I just get there. He's not gone. If I hurry, I can make it. And I'm sorry, I'm crying, but talk about that night a lot.
I appreciate you sharing this with all of us.
And so after that, the police talked to me, and they just told me there was no foul play that they could see, and that they were going to have an investigation and try to figure out what happened. And from there, it was just, you're just destroyed. I mean, just breathing becomes hard, and, just trying to support, my other son, who just lost his twin, and my husband, and seeing him in total misery, and devastation. It was just really a rough, I would say, few weeks before we could even function. I mean, truly, my husband was off like a couple weeks, and then he went back to work, but I took off an entire month and just had to process what had happened, and look through Lane's phone and really try to figure out what went wrong. And I know that sounds like, I think I'm overinflating my sense of self that I can fix everyone's problems. I'm not saying that. But as his mother, I felt a responsibility to see the signs, help him. And he was trusting me with some of his life, not all of his life and what he was doing, but he was trusting me with a lot of it. And I felt like I failed him. And so I really just had to take a deep dive into what happened. And some people I found didn't understand me, because I don't know why, but some people would call it like I wanted to hurt, or I wanted to feel pain. It wasn't that. I just had to really examine every detail of his death and life to make sense of it all. And my husband, for example, he's the kind that just buries it. He doesn't want to think about it. He puts it out of his mind. And he became literally a workaholic. I mean, we laugh about it now, but, that's what men tend to do, is they either rely on substances, which thank God he didn't do that, but he just became a workaholic and, was working all kinds of hours. So all of us kind of each differently did different things to cope, and we just had to respect each other in that process. That's Lane's story. It's not all sad, but the end was sad. And we feel like still to this day, something will come up and we say, oh, if only if that would have happened, then this might have happened. Mm-hmm. And we still, even 2.5 years later, we still do the if onlys, and I would have, could have, should have, maybe if this happened this way. And even though I've worked through all those scenarios, it's interesting how they still come up every once in a while, and that's how grief has been for me. It's not linear at all. It's been all over the place, from one day to the next even. And even something that I've processed and put away, I might have to revisit again later, and I might have to think about it some more and then put it up again. And that is, it really has taken a long time and a lot of effort to get to the place now where I am, which is feeling like I'm sort of kind of coming back to myself now. So, and that's one thing I wanted to say too about my own grief journey is when I lost my mother in 2015, I grieved the loss of her and I missed her, and we were best friends. So really, I missed the best friend in her. But I didn't lose myself when I lost my mom. But when I lost Lane, I lost part of myself. And I didn't understand that. I was like, why is my grief experience not the same? And then with counseling and therapy, it helped me realize, well, it's because the relationship was different. Lane was a part of me. I brought him into this world. And so once you understand that, even every different person that passes away, we all experience loss, that it's about our perspective and our relationship is what makes it different. And so, that's just how I kind of like realized that this is the way I am, is that I have to grieve this way. And if people don't understand it, it's okay. It's, some people came alongside me in my grief, and some people just literally, I think I was a reminder to them that the worst thing can happen is that you can lose a child. And so you become a representation to some people of their worst nightmare, because they see you and they say, oh, she lost her child. How awful. And they just don't know what to say to you. And I found that to be true too. You know, the people that I thought maybe would be with me, have, you know, have grown away from me a little bit. And the people that I never dreamed would be alongside me have come alongside me. So it's an interesting dynamic how, you know, things shift. And I feel like, you know, especially, I haven't mentioned it before, but my deep faith is what really got me through, is because I believe there, you know, there is life after death. And my Christian faith keeps me in that positive light of, you know, in the end, we win, we get to go home, you know, and so this isn't all there is. And I get to see Lane again. And so that gives me hope, you know, for the future. So anyway, I kind of rambled there, but
yeah. No, thank you. That's beautiful. I glad you touched on how we all grieve differently. Yes. Even if the same person grieve a loss, it's a different type of loss. Like, you grieve differently when you lose your mom, when your mom passed away, versus Lane, who is your child, and I can, you know, relate to that, because when I lost my grandmother, my uncle, I grieve differently. And when, you know, when you lose your son, like you said, it's like part of you is gone. You become a different person and you start questioning everything. Yeah. You know, you question yourself if you did the right thing, and you go back and try to fix everything. And that's just the process of grief. Not that if you would do anything differently, it's probably not going to change anything, because everything is written in the sky, right? Sometimes things are already designed to be that way, and we just accept that the person that we lost always here with us. Like you said, there's life after death, and you know, I can go really deep into that subject.
Me too.
But I believe that faith saved me, saved a lot of people, and it did save you. And to believe in something greater than ourselves, right? It's comforting. And through the grieving process, it's been 2 years for you now.
Yeah, 2.5.
And stuff still come up. And what would you tell other people who just embarking on this journey? I know when I first lost my son, I reached out to you, and it was a great comfort, because you understood what I was going through, you know, the pain, the sorrow, the guilt, the shock, and you know, everything remind you of your child, everything. And, you know, going to the restaurant, going shopping, watching a movie, and to turn that pain into the beauty of the happy memories that we have together. It is a process, right? And you recommend me to read a book, which was very helpful. And what was that?
So it's called Surviving the Unthinkable, The Loss of a Child. And I read probably 25 books. I counted them the other day. This one was the most helpful, I think, in the beginning, early stages, within a month or so of loss. And interestingly, it was given to me by another mother who had lost her child. So, and she wrote a note in it and sent it to me. So that really helped me realize I wasn't alone in my grief, that there were other mothers, especially out there, who felt the same way I did. And that gave me comfort. And so, you know, when you're talking about, you know, recommendations for listeners, I made a little list, because you know, there's some things that I feel like I did right in my grief process, and then there's a few things I did wrong. And one of my wrong things, I'll just get that out of the way in the beginning, is that I
Okay.
ate my grief. I ate, and I've gained 50 pounds. And it's because I have no vices. I have no addictions other than food. And I just turned to food in my sadness. I had this deep sadness that I didn't know what to do with, and I filled it with food. And so now I'm trying to deal with that. But that was one of the poor choices I made to cope with my grief. But I did write down a couple of things that really worked well for me. And one of them, the first one, go ahead.
Yeah, and there's no poor choice, really. You did the best you can, right? You need to comfort yourself. But now that you recognize that, you want to do something about it.
And that's what I'm trying to do. That's this year's focus. But one of the things I did, and you talked about it just now with you, is, finding your people. When you go through grief, you got to find your people, the people that will support you in your grief. And like we said, it's not necessarily who you think it is going to be. It might be somebody. For me, it was other mothers who had lost children. That's who I resonated with. That's who I had, especially those that were further along in their journey. So those that had, been, lost their child 5 or 7 or 10 years ago. These people I gravitated towards because I saw that they figured out a way to live. They figured out a way to go forward in their life. And I wanted to know how they did it, because in the very beginning, especially, I wasn't sure I would survive. I mean, I really wasn't. I thought that I would die of a broken heart. That's the way I felt inside. And so when I saw other mothers and they would talk to me, and I was like, okay, well, she's 7 years out, or she's 10 years out, and look at how, she is now. And, there is hope for me, is kind of how I saw that. The other thing I did is I carved out private time every single day to actively grieve. And what I mean by that is, meditation, prayer. I looked through pictures. I cried. A lot of times I cried in the shower or cried in the car, because those are the only places that were alone sometimes. But I gave myself room and breath to grieve instead of stuffing it down and pushing out the thoughts and trying to be strong and tough and push through. I allowed myself to break down. But they had limit. I had to limit that because we still have to function. I still had to go to work. I still had to go to the grocery store. I still had to do all those things that we do. But that really helped me. Now I can look back on that time and realize that was the best thing that I did, because I think it's one of the reasons why I'm okay now. I'm still sad. I'm still heartbroken, but I'm functional, and I'm coming back to myself. My personality's coming back. Something happened at the 2-year mark that I got to the point where I was healed enough or strong enough to go forward. And that's really what Lane would want from me. Lane doesn't want me to suffer for his mistake. And so when I do that, I think of him, and I think of how proud he'd be of me, that I didn't let this, kill me too, But the other thing I really wanted to say, sorry, I took a bunch of notes, is in the early days, I really kept it simple and flexible. And that was advice from other mothers that really helped me. And I did a lot of self-care. And by self-care, I mean, journal. I drank tea. I walked. I would go get a massage. I'd go get a pedicure. I mean, I realize not everyone's budget, they can do that, but those simple self-care things helped me be kind to myself and be gentle with myself. And it really did help me go forward to the next day. And sometimes I could tell if I was pushing too hard to get back to my old life. If I would just take a mental health day and just schedule a massage or go do something, that would then help me to keep going forward. So just being really in tune with yourself on what your needs are, and being okay with loving yourself enough to take a break from life if you need to, and I found I needed that more than ever, even more than when I lost my mom. When I lost Lane, I had to take a break from life a lot, and I think that's okay. We need to give ourselves permission to do that. The other thing I figured out, and I'm sure you have too, maybe, is besides our spiritual connection, with God, that grief is such a lonely road. You have to travel it alone. And, we talked about respecting the differences of others. With my husband, I kept trying to enforce my way of grieving on him, and he would get angry at me. And he'd be like, well, you're different than me. That's not how I grieve. Like if I wanted to listen to a song or look at some pictures, or, I wanted to talk about Lane. I wanted to talk about him all the time. And my husband didn't. He said, I eventually want to talk about him, but I can't right now. And so I had to learn to respect his wishes. And if I wanted to stay married, right, I had to learn to kind of say, okay.
Of course, after how many years? 27 years.
I was like, okay, I've got 27 years invested. I better make sure that we stay married after this. And that's another thing, that we could bring up is, you read all these statistics about marriages that don't survive the loss of a child. And I see why, because this is one of the main reasons, is that you change so much when you lose a child. And sometimes you change together, or sometimes you change apart, or sometimes, like in our case, we grieved separately, but we still supported one another and stayed connected, in our relationship. And so that's how we survived it. And then the last thing I was going to say is, eventually, and this may be years out until a person's ready, but I find that if you can find a new purpose or a reason for living, for going forward, and whether that's a spiritual journey, writing, volunteer work, a different career where you can give back to others, whatever that looks like for you. But for me, I had to pull a purpose out of my pain. Otherwise, it's just pain and loss. Mm-hmm. And so I'm still looking for my purpose, actually. And I'm staying open to what that might look like.
This is one of them. This is one of them, actually. You're helping other...
It may be.
Yeah, you're helping other mothers.
Yeah, I hope so. Because I really feel like, even though with my clinician background, like you said, I'm not in a place to help those in active addiction recovery or recovery. Mm-hmm. It's just too raw for me. I either need to work with people in prevention, like how do we prevent people from using substances? How do we get these awful drugs off our streets? Or on the other end of the spectrum, which is the grief process, of families, coming together in grief. But that whole middle section of what I went through with Lane, I just quickly found out that wasn't going to be where I could help someone else. It just took too much from me. I almost feel like, I always tell people, drugs have taken too much from me. I don't want to give them one more ounce of my energy. And that sounds mean and hateful, but really, drugs are horrible, and look what they've done to our society. Yeah. And I don't mean that to the people who are going through recovery. I have empathy for them. I really do. I just can't be the one to help them. That's just a realization that you get when you get older and you learn who you are, of what you're capable of, right, and what you're not capable of. And I think that's okay, because there's other people called to help those people, Yeah. So
definitely, we all have different purpose, right?
Right, exactly. So that was my few things I wanted to share with you, because, there's many more little things, but, having a network of people around me still to this day that check in on me, that's valuable. Mm-hmm. People that still validate my loss, and that my loss doesn't have an end date. like I've always said, and I think you probably feel this way too, that when you lose your child, you in some way grieve for the rest of your life. Until you join them someday, you miss them and you grieve for them, and that's natural. I don't know why we need to tell people, oh, you got to hurry up and get through this year grieving process and then you can go on with your life. That's not how it works.
Life just changed for you, right? You just live life differently.
Right. And your grief changes.
There's no getting over. There's no getting over loss.
No.
And
there's learning to live with it is what you do. You learn to build your life around it. You get stronger in that, but that takes time. And your grief looks different at 1 year, 2 year, 3 year, 4 year, 5 year. I met a patient the other day who told me she had lost her son in a car accident, and it was 27 years ago.
Wow.
And she still cried. And my heart broke with her because I could see that it still pains her and it still hurts her 27 years later. So, we don't get over it. We just learn to carry it a little better. That's all that happens. So that's my perspective anyway.
Yeah. and my perspective too, we on the same page there. You don't get over stuff like that, and it just changed you completely. And I shared with you this before. I'm a spiritual person to begin with, and when my son passed a year ago, I'm like deep into my spiritual practice, meditation, and all those stuff, and try to find the answer of why. And then you just know that there's no explanation. It just is. And you like you say, you learn to live with the fact.
Right.
And in the beginning, I know I probably couldn't talk about this like months ago, especially a year ago or 2 months after it. But now you share with me, and if it's okay, if we talk about this, you're at the point where you feel so painful that you don't want to live.
Yeah.
You just want to end your life.
Yeah.
And there are moments like that. And, for the listener, because I know there are mothers out there who just like, I just want to die. It's too painful to live with. Can you validate their feeling? It's like we both went through this, and we went through times when we're like, there's no way I want to go on.
Right.
And it's okay as long as we want to let the listener know it's okay to feel like that. Just know that you have support, that is, other people feel the same way you do. And it's okay to come out of it.
Yes, it's temporary.
Come out of that sadness. It's temporary. It just know that it is temporary.
It is temporary.
How did you deal with those painful moments?
Well,
if you may share with us.
Yeah. So, my faith won't allow me to hurt myself. So even though there was times I wanted to die, there is nothing I would have done to cause my death. And that includes reckless behavior. I wasn't going to drive 90 miles an hour and smash into a tree. I wasn't going to take a drug. I wasn't going to, do anything to harm myself. But there were multiple times that I was just like, God, please take me. I am broken. My heart is shattered. I don't even recognize myself in the mirror. I don't want to be here. Why am I still here? I mean, I kind of got angry a little bit. Like, why couldn't I have gone with Lane? But, God reminds me, and my family reminds me, that I still have a son on this earth that needs me. And I still have a husband, and I have a father, and I have a sister and 2 brothers, and I have family that still loves me and needs me. And in those moments, that's what I would just say to myself. I'm here because my family needs me. And, and knowing too that those feelings are temporary. And I remember in the beginning, one of the moms told me, that feeling would last for a while. But she said something happens around the 2-year mark. And at the time I thought, okay, I hope that happens for me, that it gets better. Because when you're in that dark tunnel, you don't see the light. You just think this long dark tunnel is forever. But I'll have you know, for whatever reason, that on that 2-year mark, the light of day lifted. And I don't know whether that was God working in me or just enough healing had taken place that, I don't have those dark thoughts anymore, But I'll also share with you that I had to go on medication. I had to take an SSRI. I'm on Prozac. And I always laugh and tell people now, if they say, how in the world did you survive the loss of your son? And I said, Jesus and Prozac. And I say it in a funny way just because I'm trying to lighten the mood, but there's some truth to that. I had to have medication to help me. And, and truly, how else did I survive was my family and friends loving me, supporting me, allowing me to love them and their grief. I mean, that's how you survive. And the other thing that I did, which was also at the advice of my therapist, is, she would say, you're looking too far in the future. She said, just look at the day ahead of you. She said, you do the next thing. So she said, you get up, you make your coffee. What do you do next? I go get a shower. Okay, go get a shower. What do you do next? And just focus on the next thing. And as simple as that sounds, it really was helpful, because if I got caught in my negative mind loop, I would just say, Laurie, do the next thing. Get out of this. Do the next thing. And then one day, as we know, when we lose our child, even though our heart stops, time doesn't stop. And so time keeps marching on. And I look back now, and it's been 2.5 years, and I'm like, I can't believe it. I mean, it feels like yesterday, and it feels like forever all at once. That's how, how disrupted the time feels to me. So anyway, I just wanted to share that, because it is true that I had to go to counseling. I had to have medication. I had to rely on my faith. And I still, I'll touch on a little bit. I still struggle a little bit with my faith, mainly my prayer life, because I prayed for Lane and God took him home. And that's not what I had in mind. But, God is God and I am me. So I have to accept that, God knew what was best for Lane, because he loves Lane more than I do. Imagine that. So once I realized that, he might have seen what was in the future for Lane, and going home may have been the best answer. And that's hard as a mother to say and to feel. And sometimes I have to say it multiple times to myself to really feel it again. But I do hold on to that thought that Lane's story had to end that way, and that God knew that that's how it had to happen. And even though I wish that he had been Narcan that night, I wish that someone had done CPR on him. I wish that he'd have got a chance at rehab, even one chance. A lot of people get a chance. Why didn't my boy get a chance? All these things that you say to yourself. And then, I would just pray and say, but God, help me understand that you love him more than I do, even, and you know what was best for him. So.
Right. And to go back to what you mentioned earlier about you have to take medication, you have to rely on your faith. You don't have to, you chose to, and it's okay. And a lot of people try to be strong and push through, like you said, right? We human, we are human, and we need each other. We need, sometimes, I'm as a pharmacist, by trade. There's a lot in the medical world that I don't believe in. And there's a lot in medications that I don't believe in. But the one thing I believe is there are times that thank God somebody invented
Yes.
some of those medication, because you do need,
You do.
it's like, having a broken leg and then you need morphine, know,
Right.
and going through this grief process. It's okay to take that support.
Yeah.
And that's what it's there
Yeah.
for. It's not okay when you're taking it recklessly and for no reason. And I just want to validate
Yes.
you for that, and commend you for being brave to share that and to share the whole story.
Yeah.
And
I think also, with our background, in the medical field, it's important to realize too that it's a multi-layered approach to management of grief, depression, anxiety, whatever mental health issues. So it should always be coupled with therapy, and so many people, I think this is what's, our young kids struggle with sometimes, is they miss out on that key ingredient to help them get well. Talking to someone who's an expert, who is non-biased and, outside of their family to talk to, that's a professional, is essential, and I know how much it helped me. I just recently went back and visited my grief counselor, and she commended me. She said, "You are so different." And she said, "I haven't seen you for a year, and when I last saw you, you didn't know if you'd survive, and look at you now." And I was like, "Yeah, you're right." I was like, "How cool is that? I got a pat on the back from my therapist."
Yeah, exactly. You know, sometimes things just takes time, and it is a process. When you are going through the storm, especially in the beginning, it's almost like you say, like going through the deep, dark tunnel, and you're not sure if you're going to come out of it. But we're here to let you know that there's light at the end of the tunnel.
That's right. There is light. and you will never be completely whole. That's the other expectation. Like, I will never be the same Laurie that I was before I lost Lane. And that's okay. There's some things that improved about me, and there's some things that are worse with me, like we just mentioned. But it's all okay. It's all right. I mean, I can, like I said, I can carry him with me now. Now I look at it as, how can I be his legacy? He never had children. He didn't get to. But I'm his mom, and how can I be his legacy? How can I honor him with the things that I do with my life? And that's what I look to. And also my other son, for Lucas, how can I be here for him? So, you do eventually get to a place where you can get back to the little bit of yourself that you knew. And that for me was when I think when I had the turning point in my grief, because the first year I didn't even know who I was. I was angry. I was bitter, and I had never been that in my entire life. I was jealous. I was jealous of happy people. Isn't that sad? But I would hear them laughing, like even at work or somewhere, and I'd be like, what is wrong with them? Why are they laughing? Because I was so angry and so hurt and so just struck down, and just being honest, that is not my personality. So for me to be like that, I was like, who am I? And what has happened to me? And why am I jealous? And why am I bitter? And why am I angry? So it was kind of shocking, to know yourself for 49 years. And then one day after you lose your child, you wake up and you don't recognize yourself in the mirror. But that's what happened. So it took a while to come back to myself, so, but I finally am. So that's good.
Yeah, it's okay.
Yeah.
It's okay. And you mentioned, and I want to kind of express my opinion on that, if it's okay with you. When you said that you never be whole again. And I think we can also look at that in a different way. You are always whole because God created you whole. And God never took Lane away from you. He just at home, but he's still with you in your heart.
Yeah.
So you still
Thank
hold.
you.
And you just see things differently. And you grew in wisdom. You grew in compassion. You grew in the understanding of life. And one thing I know, Laurie, you're the most wholesome, holiest person that I've known. You're just such a beautiful soul. And I'm glad when I first moved here from Thailand to the US, I get to have you as a friend. And
me too.
I'm happy that we reconnected again, and I'm sure we're gonna be like lifelong friends.
I think so too.
And yeah, and we'll speak some more. And you mentioned that you want to leave a legacy, and that there's always a reason. And this is what I believe: there's a reason in everything, every situation, every encounter that we have. There's a study that I did that it said every situation, every person that you met, that you come upon, is a chance to forgive. To forgive whatever you think you did, to forgive what you think the other person did, and just and just look at the situation as how God created it. He knows better than we do. Everything is beautiful, and everything is the way it's supposed to be. And we came a long way with the loss, right? And to come to this understanding. And I appreciate you coming on here.
Yeah.
Do you have anything else?
I do. I wanted
to
to read something that I found, if you don't mind. And I wanted to quote the author. So I tried to find the author, but we could not find the author, but it was posted on a Facebook group page. And so I'm going to take the liberty to read it if you're okay with that. It says, when pregnant, the cells of the baby migrate into the mother's bloodstream and then circle back into the baby. It's called fetal maternal chimerism. For 41 weeks, the cells circulate and merge backwards and forwards, and after the baby is born, many of these cells stay in the mother's body, leaving a permanent imprint in the mother's tissues, bones, brain, and skin, and often stay there for decades. Every single child a mother has afterwards will leave a similar imprint on her body too. Even if a pregnancy doesn't go to full term, these cells still migrate into your bloodstream, and research has shown that if a mother's heart is injured, fetal cells will rush to the site of the injury and change into different types of cells that specialize in mending the heart. The baby helps repair the mother while the mother builds the baby. How amazing is that? This is often why certain illnesses vanish while pregnant. It's incredible how mothers' bodies protect the baby at all costs, and the baby protects and rebuilds the mother back so that the baby can develop safely and survive. Studies have also shown cells from a fetus in a mother's brain 18 years after she gave birth. If you're a mom, you know how you can intuitively feel your child even when they are not there. Well, now there is scientific proof that moms carry them for years and years, even after they have given birth to them. I find this to be so very beautiful. Isn't that awesome? I know.
It's beautiful. Yes. It's beautiful. And that's why we still feel our child
they're still
all
with
the
us.
time. Yeah. They're still with us.
Literally, physically, they're still with us.
Literally, physically, right? Yeah. Thank you for sharing that. That is so beautiful, Laurie. You mentioned that there are many books that you read, many things that you do to help you go through this, and there is a group that you recommend me to join, which I have
No,
not.
that's okay.
I'm doing okay. I'm still seeing my counselor. It is great to find a group or people that you can talk to who are specialized in this. Who were that group of
Well, you
people
asked
that you
me
tell
now,
me?
and I can't remember the name of it, because this is another thing in my grief journey, is I decided one day that Facebook was too triggering for my grief and sadness. And I actually unplugged from Facebook. So I'm still on Messenger, so people can still contact me privately. But that Facebook group was very helpful to me for a time period. And then, just like anything else, I listened to how I was feeling, and I decided this is keeping me in a negative headspace. And I am putting the trauma of others onto myself. When I read, I have so much empathy now for people's pain, especially with loss of a child, that I just had to break from it. So I listened to my own self, and I just said, you know what, I'm going to step off of Facebook for a while. And it's been very good for me. A lot of times too, it's, I find social media, I don't know. In the beginning, like I said, I found it helpful, but I think over time I found that it was so impersonal, and people can pretend to be anybody they want. But it was also so, it drew me back into the hard parts of my grief, if you will. So something that I had processed and moved forward on, there would be a post in there that just totally wrecked me, and for the whole day. And I was like, I can't do this to myself again. So I actually had to unfollow that. So, and then, also I'll just be honest, while I'm talking about social media, Facebook, also triggered me in a bad way, because I got to see happy families, and I'll just be honest, but like, if I was seeing a family on vacation and they had all their family members, I would just be so sad on what I've lost with Lane. He's never gonna have children. He's never gonna get married. He's never gonna go to college or graduate or any of these things that you're getting to see other people's kids do. And I just couldn't see it anymore. Essentially, I just had to kind of go into my own little world and live my life, face to face with people, and not have a social media presence. Now, eventually I may go back to that, because, all of my memories are on Facebook too. I have albums and all kinds of Facebook memories of Lane on there that I don't want to lose forever. But at the same time, I know that for this time period, it wasn't good for me. And so I had to remove that part. So anyway, but there are groups out there.
Listen to yourself, right? Yeah. Listen to how you feel and what you want to take on at the moment.
Right. But there are all kinds of Facebook groups. I mean, and I found the ones most helpful were the ones that deal with mothers, because, like I said, fathers grieve differently, and that's okay. So I identified more with the female perspective, the mother's perspective. That was just me. That was just the way I was. But sometimes it was nice to read a male perspective, because then I could understand my husband better, of what he was going through and how he was choosing to grieve. And so it was helpful for a time, but I've just decided not to be on there now. And I did even start my own little, I'm thinking about writing a memoir. I journaled a lot through this time period, the last 2.5 years. And my original journal entries were very raw and kind of rambling and didn't make sense, because I had so much in me that I had to get out. And so that I didn't want to share with anybody. But there's been themes in some of them that as I go back and read, I'm like, okay, maybe I should write a memoir, because, that might help someone, not the angry stuff, but like the other stuff might help someone. So I was like, okay.
But the angry stuff is fun too, because people need to know that that's okay. You can be angry. You have the right to be angry, because you're going to go through all this emotion, the anger, the denial, the sadness, all this stuff. It's okay. You're going to cycle through them. And it's still all okay. But just knowing that with time, everything will be okay.
For sure. Mm-hmm. Right. Yeah. Yep. Keep doing the next thing, like they say, And then one day it's 2.5 years and you're like, so now I'm getting to the point. So this is where I am now, that I can think of Lane and smile instead of cry. Before, my memories of Lane were encompassed with this heavy sadness and tears. But now I can look at his picture and just say, I love you, buddy. Or, I can think of him in a memory and I can smile and laugh and remember his laugh or something and smile, and I don't get immediately sad. And I like where I'm at now, because I was so desperate for it, especially for the first couple of years, when every memory I had of Lane brought this stab of sadness. And and so now I'm at a place where I can remember him and be happy. And that's a gift, truly, when you get to that place, So I hope that for you too, because I think you already have it to a large degree, just because I can tell by, what you say about your faith and how spiritual you are and how connected to him you still feel. Some people, I just think, are strong emotional intelligence inside them and a spiritual maturity, and you have that. And so I feel like in some ways, like you're at 1 year and I'm at 2.5, but we're almost like equal, because I feel like you just get it. I don't know, you just understand that this isn't all there is, that, we're spiritual beings, and love never ends, like we say, love never ends. And so anyway, thank you for having me. I didn't really realize.
Thank you for being here, Laurie.
I was nervous to come on today, but I was like, I'm going to do this for Lane, and I'm going to do this for you, my old new friend. And I was like, and it'll be okay. I can do this, even though I hate to hear my...
Oh, you did beautiful.
Even though I hate to hear my West Virginia accent. You lost your West Virginia accent. You kept your Thailand accent, and you lost your West Virginia accent. I don't know how you did it.
I've moved. I've been everywhere, and somehow the Thai accent is still here, but everything else is just gone.
That's good.
Yeah. It's been amazing speaking with you. I know we have some sad moments, but we know at the end of the day we overcame the greatest I think test for humanity, for anybody to have to go through. I think the loss of a child is hard. It's really difficult, and I appreciate you coming on here and sharing your wisdom and sharing the book that you read, that you share with me. It's an awesome book, by the way. If you are at the beginning of your grief, especially like Laurie said, I read that, and it's also help, right, with people who are a supporter.
Oh yes, it has a whole section in there for people that are trying to support those, which, that's the other thing, if somebody's listening to this that's trying to support a mother in grief, you should read this book too, because it really tells you what is helpful to her and what is not helpful to her. And I just had such an amazing group of friends and family that supported me and loved me through this, and still do. I mean, that they haven't forgotten, and that means the world. That's how we're able to get up in the morning and go about our day, is because people have loved us through this, and and been okay with our journey. So anyway, it's nice to be able to pay it forward. When you receive love and kindness in your most trying time, it's very gratifying as a human to be able to help the next person that experiences this level of pain, like you said. I've never lost a spouse, but I figure that's pretty painful too, about like losing a child. But there's some things in life that we just can't manage alone, and I think this is one of them. We have to rely on our fellow mankind to get us through, Yeah. So
we are meant to support each other, and thank you so much, Laurie. Thank you. We there's so much to touch on in this space. You have to write your book.
Yeah,
now that you came on this podcast. The next time you will come with your memoir, already written. And I'm sure that's going to help a lot of people. All the raw stuff you need to put in there, because people, that's what people crave for. The feeling that they're not alone, that other people went through some deep, dark thoughts, and and they come out okay. They come out great, like you know. Like me.
That's right.
I would throw myself in there too.
That's right.
Yeah. Let's get to the lighter side of our interview. And I do this for all my guests. And it's just something that I start doing it for fun. And also just to see what kind of answer people will give me.
Yeah.
So now let me ask you this question, Laurie.
Okay.
If you have a genie in a bottle, and you can wrap the genie in a bottle and say, "Hey, genie, give me 3 wishes," and you can have any wishes in the world, and it will just change your world for better.
Yeah.
And what would those 3 wishes be?
Okay, so I thought about this quite a long time, but of course, my first one is going to be that I could have Lane back, but only if he was happy and healthy. I wouldn't want him to come back and be miserable. So that was my first one. And my second one was really about my health. I think, I told you a little bit about how I've just gained weight and just become unhealthy the last 2.5 years. And I really just want to get back to feeling good in my body again. And so my health, I would like to restore my health. That would be the second one. And the third one is all about, my other son, Lucas. I'd love for him to just, find a career that he's, can make money, but also just be very gratifying, in a career. He's struggling to find what he wants to do in life. And, of course, that he would find the love of his life and someone to love him and be with him. So anyway, that's it. That's my 3 wishes. That's easy, isn't it?
Those are beautiful wishes.
I'm sure most people say, I wish I could win the lottery, right?
But let me play genie in a bottle.
Okay.
Genie can give you any wishes, of course. But I want to speak because my wish, my first wish is the same as yours. Of course, I wish that my son would be back in, if he's happy and if he's healthy, and to continue his life, his journey, and any mother would wish that, and anybody who have lost a loved one would wish that. And I actually interviewed another lady who lost her father and her ex-husband, not her ex-husband, her late husband. And her wish was for her father to come back, and I say this to you the same way I said to her. they're always here.
Yeah.
It's like your lane never left you. Your lane is always with you, in spirit, right? He lives in your heart, and he's with you in a form that is greater than we can ever imagine, right?
Yeah.
Flawless, exactly how God created him. You know, we have, as a human, right, we put all this layer, all this belief, and put that on ourselves, and we think we are imperfect, but we are actually perfect the way God created us. And Lane is always with you.
Thank you for that.
And
yeah.
Your wish is there. It's never left you. And before I touch on the other two wishes, I want to do this for you.
Okay.
And this is a blue ribbon. It said, "Who I am makes a difference," and I am the ambassador of the blue ribbon. What we do as an ambassador and as a human being is we honor people who we love and who we care about and who we recognize that there's something great. And Laurie, I just want to honor you. May I?
Oh, yeah,
it's a
sure.
gift.
Thank you.
I want to honor you for coming on this podcast and just be as raw as you can be and just share your experience with the loss of your son. I know that's difficult, and it took you 2 years to be ready, right, to talk about him in a positive light. Sorry, I forgot to to talk about him. You know, it took 2 years to talk about him in a positive light, and not in like, you know, I'm sad, I'm sorrow, and to remember him in all the great way that he bring joy into your life. Right, I just want to honor you for that. I want to honor you for being such a great friend.
Thank you.
And didn't forget about me.
I won't forget about you.
Lost childhood friend.
Yeah.
And I appreciate that very much. And I want to honor you for being a great mom to your twin boys, and for being a great wife for your husband of, oh my gosh, how many years?
27.
20 years. And I know it takes a lot of commitment, a lot of love to stay in a good relationship for that long. And I just want to honor you for that.
Thank you.
I want to honor you for being a good teacher to your students. Before this podcast, we kind of chit-chat a little bit about your student, and this blue ribbon goes on your heart like this.
Okay.
And I want to place that on your heart. It goes like this, pointing up to the sky.
Okay, thank you.
Where all your dreams come true, all your wishes come true.
Oh, I love that.
And it is a tradition for me to take a spark from my heart and put it on yours, and on this cheerleader right here. And when we press on it, it makes a sound, bing. And that's the sound of our wishes come true.
Oh, I love that. Thank you.
Thank you, Laurie. Thank you so much for being on this podcast, and I appreciate you. And I'm sure there are many listeners out there that appreciate your insight, appreciate your wisdom and your advice. And thank you. Thank you so much from the bottom of my heart.
Well, thank you for giving me the format to share my story. And you know, like we talked about before, that's our whole goal, is to help others along this life that gives us tragedy sometimes. And, you know, so thank you for giving me the opportunity to talk about Lane and my experience. I really appreciate it, and I'm glad we reconnected.
Thank you. And you got to come back for more, because you're doing more things.
Okay.
You're finding different purpose in this.
Yeah. For sure.
That's great.
Okay.
Thank you, Laurie.
Thank you. Take care.
Talk again later.
Okay. Bye-bye.